Hello, I'm David Kidney. I'm the Chief Executive of the UK Public Health Register, and this is my webinar about the changes we have made to the e-portfolio because of the use of amended standards from April 2019 for practitioner registration. And in support of what I want to say now, I have some slides which I'd like to talk you through to show you what the changes are. So we have made the changes to the standards since April 2019, and for a period of time until 2021, we're going to see two sets of standards running side by side. The original standards are still valid until people who are already working towards registration using them have achieved registration, whereas the amended standards are available for anybody to use from April 2019. So originally the portfolio was developed because we started practitioner registration in 2011 using a paper-based portfolio, and it was obvious that it would be more convenient for all concerned if there could be an e-portfolio. And what we used at the time was an existing product provided by City and Guilds called Learning Assistant, and it was modified to be usable as an e-portfolio for practitioner registration. It's been developed and used by several of the practitioner registration schemes around the UK, but not all, and it's used by many practitioners, but at the moment not all. We do have an ambition that in the future the e-portfolio will be the default format for all practitioners to use in achieving their practitioner registration. So the original standards were established with a lot of work from many partners and drawing on numerous different sources of standards. And that same kind of intense work by a wide range of people involving a lot of consultation was behind the amended standards, which we introduced in April 29. And just as an e-portfolio consortium had helped us to develop the e-portfolio for the original standards, so too in 2019, when we needed the e-portfolio to be usable for the amended standards, the e-portfolio consortium has been really useful and helpful. And I do have to say a special word too for in England, Health Education England have been really supportive of practitioner registration and the use of an e-portfolio. And it was only during the last year that they brought together all of the uses of the e-portfolio by all of the registration schemes using one in England under a single contract. So we wanted to adjust the original e-portfolio to take account of the amended standards in 2019. And the interim solution that we came up with was that a new course would be added to the Learning Assistant product that we were using. So alongside the original standards as one course on the e-portfolio, there's now another course for the amended standards. And it's really important to explain that because they're two courses on the same product, the functionality supporting both sets of standards is the same. So it really isn't possible to change the functionality for one course without it affecting the other course. And an example of that is partial acceptance, where for partial acceptance, at the present time in the original standards, a practitioner and an assessor can end up in a situation where the assessor has partially accepted the evidence provided by the practitioner as going towards proving a standard. In the amended standards, there is no place for partial acceptance. However, the partial acceptance function is on the original standards e-portfolio course, and it's not possible to take it off for the amended standards course without it being removed from the original one too. And that's not something we can do while people are still following the original standards and still have access to partial acceptance. So we're going to have to, going forward, remind people using the amended standards that partial acceptance does not exist for them. We have set up the amended standards as a course, as I've said, and for those using the ePortfolio, it'll be shown under the title Public Health Practitioner Standards 2019. For those schemes who've been using the ePortfolio with the original standards, it's been set up as an additional parallel course for their practitioners, so they'll have access to both. For a scheme where there was no use of the ePortfolio in the past, but they're going to use it for amended standards, or schemes that did not exist previously but exist now, there's little point in having the original standards course on the ePortfolio available to their practitioners. So for them, only the amended standards, the 2019 course, will show on their ePortfolio anyway. Always, with the ePortfolio, assessors, verifiers and moderators have had access to the ePortfolio in order to carry out their roles. And there's no difference with the amended standards and their course. Assessors, verifiers and moderators will continue to have access. And all the things that they do in terms of recording information will be available under the amended standards course. Some slight changes have been made as a result of this opportunity to the assessment log, and that's changed for both courses. And some slight changes have been made to the verifiers comments section, and again that's available to both courses. And no changes have been made to moderation and how the moderators use the ePortfolio and record their findings. I used partial acceptance a little while ago as an example of how we can't change the functionality for one of the two courses without it affecting both. And it's worth stressing this now for partial acceptance. There will be a button, even on the amended standards course, that says partial acceptance. And it will be obvious to practitioners and assessors that it is there, but they're not to use it for the amended standards. So we need to make clear through scheme coordinators that assessors and practitioners ought not to use the partial acceptance button for the amended standards course. Another example of this is the practitioner overview section. There is in both courses a section headed Practitioner Overview. In the original standards course, this has always been an optional part of the ePortfolio for a practitioner to complete. But with the amended standards course, it's mandatory that someone who is preparing their portfolio will complete the practitioner overview as part of their completion of the ePortfolio. So for the functionality of both courses, the practitioner overview will be visible and it will say that it's optional. But for the amended standards course, it is not optional, it's mandatory. And again, we're going to need to rely on scheme coordinators to make this clear to both assessors and practitioners that for the amended standards course, the practitioner must complete the practitioner overview part of the ePortfolio. At the request of scheme coordinators, another change was made, which this will affect both functions, so the original standards course and the amended standards course. And this is the so-called 30-day rule. Until now, any comments by assessors and verifiers cannot be changed once they've been in place in the ePortfolio for 30 days. But because there were some difficulties for schemes in administering this, and it became very restrictive for them, we've changed this now so that the locking occurs after 6 months beyond when the comments were entered. And this allows editing for a much greater period of time. And as I say, this was at the request of scheme coordinators themselves. So just talking about the next steps, we have now an e-portfolio that is usable for the original standards, and it is usable for the amended standards. It's got some limitations as to functionality that I've described that we will need to manage in the interim. But looking forward, it's hoped that we will manage to develop an e-portfolio that will be usable seamlessly for the amended standards going forward. And we've had some great support in England from Health Education England, who've paid for a contractor called Beyond Local to look at what we would need to specify for a new e-portfolio for the amended standards for practitioner registration in the future. And we're looking forward to being able to share at a later stage the thinking about how the e-portfolio might be developed. Health Education England's remit is England, of course, but we're looking to develop an e-portfolio that's usable across the United Kingdom so that we're consistent everywhere in the United Kingdom. And this brings benefits like, for example, schemes being able to share assessors and verifiers in times of need. Lastly, I just want to say that here in the office of the UK Public Health Register, everybody who works here wants to help, and we're always available to answer inquiries during office hours each week. And we welcome people getting in touch, and we'll help if we can. I hope you found this briefing useful to explain the changes that have been made to the e-portfolio. They're not huge changes. They work with the grain of what we already knew, and I'm looking forward to hearing feedback from people that it's been a welcome development and people find the e-portfolio easy to use. But thank you very much for watching this webinar.